Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Michael and today we're going to be making homemade tomato soup. Once you try this recipe, you will never buy another can of tomato soup in the store. This is so nice and creamy and smooth. I know you're going to love it. Stick with me and I'll show you how this comes together. Let's get started making our tomato soup. This is going to be so easy and delicious and you're never going to want to buy another can of tomato soup again. You'll be making it at home from now on. So let's get started cutting up our vegetables. I've got one onion here. I'm going to go ahead and cut that up. I'm going to mince it up into about half of it. We're going to use half of this onion. This is about a medium-sized onion. So I'm just going to cut this in half and we'll give this a chop through. All right, I've got my onion chopped up. You don't have to get really finely minced with it because we're going to be using a blender, or you can use an immersion stick if you've got one of those at the very end. So this is looking like it's about a half of a cup of chopped up onions. So I'm going to go ahead and put those to the side and I'm going to work on my garlic next. So now I've got 4 cloves of garlic. I'm going to go ahead and cut those up also. So now that I've got my garlic minced up, I'm going to go ahead and work on my tomatoes. Now I've got 2 28-ounce cans of whole tomatoes. And if you've got fresh ones, you can definitely cut up some Roma tomatoes in lieu of these. Or if you want to use crushed tomatoes, you can use those. This is what I've got on hand, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with these. So I'm just going to take the whole tomatoes and kind of roughly cut them in half and then cut them again in a quarter. And I'm going to do that with both of these cans. And that's all I'm going to do with them. So when I stew my tomatoes down, they'll cook a little bit faster this way. So I'm going to work on these tomatoes and I'll be right back in just a minute. Now that I've got my tomatoes prepped, let's get ready to start putting our soup together. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what was in the cans. There were about roughly 10 of the Roma sized tomatoes in each one of those cans that I had. So that kind of give you an idea, if you want to use fresh ones, about what you're looking at there with the juice in them. So I just roughly cut them in half. And that way they just cook down a little bit easier that way. So I've got a Dutch oven here. You can use a Dutch oven or a heavy stock pan if you've got one. And I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of the pan. And let that heat up just a little bit. And then I'm going to take my onions, and at this point we're just going to put those in. I'm just cooking them down so that they get a nice translucency to them. So I'm going to continue to cook these. And in about 4 or 5 minutes they should be done. And I'll let you see what that looks like when I'm finished. All right, I wanted to show you what my onions look like now. They've been cooking for about 5 minutes now, and we just wanted to make these so that they are to give a nice translucency to them. All right, now that we've got our onions done, let's go ahead and add our garlic. We want these to meld in with the onions for about 1 minute before we add in our tomatoes. There is nothing like the smell of garlic and onions cooking together as they release their oils. It just makes the house smell so good. All right, that's been about 1 minute now. I'm going to go ahead and add my tomatoes in now. So now that I've got my tomatoes in, I'm going to go ahead and give these a stir through with my onions and garlic. So now that we've got everything all mixed together, I'm going to let these simmer. Now I've got my heat back up on a medium. Just want to keep a watch on them until they start simmering. Then we're going to turn it down on low. So we're going to let these simmer for 20 to 25 minutes, and I'll show you along the way what these are looking like. All right, our tomatoes have been stewing now for about 5 minutes now, and I wanted to show you what this looks like. Definitely keep a watch on them and keep stirring them occasionally. We need to cook these for about another 20 minutes, and we're going to keep a watch on them and see they're cooking down nicely. So if you're using crushed tomatoes, you might not have to cook these as long as you did these whole ones. So just kind of keep a watch on them, and I'll bring you back when these are done and show you what this looks like. I am back. It's been 25 minutes, and I wanted to show you what the tomatoes look like after they're broken down, after they've stewed for 25 minutes. So take a look at these. These look really nice. And if you've got any big chunks in there, you can just take the side of your spatula or your spoon, whatever you're stirring them with, and you can just kind of break them down a little bit more. But this is what we're looking for here. So I'm going to turn this off. And my next step is I'm going to get my blender out, or if you've got an immersion stick, you can use that. So I'm going to put these to the side and get my blender out, and I'm going to show you the next step in making our tomato soup. All right, I am back. I've got my blender set up, and I wanted to kind of go over that. You can use a blender if you've got one, or you can use an immersion stick, whichever one you've got works. Either one will work well. My blender here has a plastic jar on it, so I do not want to put really hot liquids in my plastic jar. So I've let my tomatoes cool down here for about 10 minutes. If you've got a glass jar, then you'd be okay with that. But definitely check your blender to make sure that you've got either a glass jar or a plastic jar, because you don't want to put really hot liquids in a plastic jar just in case it might ruin your blender. So definitely let it cool down before you put it into your blender if you've got a plastic one. And if you've got a glass one, then look at your own blender and see what you've got and use your judgment for that. So I'm going to go ahead and add some tomatoes into my blender now. All right, I've got my blender half full now with my tomato puree, and I'm going to go ahead and put the top on it, and I'm going to go ahead and secure that down. And check your blender also, because if your liquids are really hot, you definitely want to vent the top of that, because if you don't, I've heard of some people say that the top will come off of it if you blend really hot foods and things. So I'm going to vent mine, and you can just kind of put a towel over the top of it to kind of hold it so you don't get tomatoes splattering all over the place. So we're going to give this a blend, and I want this blended mine really smoothly and in the texture. So I'm going to let this blend maybe about a minute, and I'll give a look at it, and I'll show you what it looks like. Be right back. All right, let's give this a check and see where we are with our consistency. Oh yeah, you can see how smooth that is. That blended for about a minute. I like mine really nice, smooth, and creamy. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this into this glass bowl, and I'm going to go ahead and put my other of my tomatoes in there, and we'll get that all blended together. All right, so now we're going to give this a taste test to see what we need to add for our seasoning. So I've got me a clean spoon here. So I'm going to check it now to see if we're going to put any salt in it. So what I typically put in mine, I've got 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. And I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and we'll add that in. And I've got a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. If you don't have heavy cream, you can use half and half. And this is completely optional. If you want to keep this vegan, you can definitely omit this part and eat the soup as it is. Or if you want to use a cream alternative, then you can definitely do that, and that way you can keep this dish vegan. I'm going to add this 1/4 cup of this heavy cream in here, and that just adds a lot more flavor to it, and it just brings out the taste of the tomatoes and everything. So we'll add that in. So now that we've got our salt, pepper, and heavy cream in, let's go ahead and give that a good mix through. I've got everything mixed in now, and I'm just going to let this heat back up again. You definitely want to let it settle in after you added your salt, pepper, and your cream to see if you needed to add anything else to it. If you're used to the canned tomato soup in the store, a lot of those are going to have some type of sweetener in them. So if you taste it and you want to put a little bit of sugar in it, you can. So definitely give it a try at this point to add any more salt, pepper. If you want any more cream in it, you can definitely put that in. Again, that was optional. If you did not want to put that in there, you don't have to. And if you wanted to put just a little bit of sugar in it, you definitely can. I do not put the sugar in mine, so I'm going to let this heat up just a little bit. I'm going to come back and plate it, and I'm going to get me a little bowl, and we're going to have this a taste test. I'll be right back. All right, I am back, and I want to give my tomato soup a test and see what this tastes like. And there's so many different things you can have with this. I typically, when I make this, I'll make me a grilled cheese sandwich, and that is really good to have with those. So I've got some croutons. You can put a few little croutons on the top of it. You've got some Parmesan cheese or any kind of cheese you'd like to put on the top of it. You can definitely grate some of that on it. And I've got some chives here that I've cut up. So we'll put a few of those on. And I've got a piece of parsley there for a little bit of decoration on the side. And let's give this a test and see what this tastes like. Oh my goodness. That is delicious, nice and creamy. I love the texture of tomato soup, and I love knowing what it's in it because you made it at home and you got control of everything that goes in it. So I hope this has inspired you to make some tomato soup at home. And if it has, give me a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. And if you like this content, maybe you might want to check out one of these other two over here. You might find something else you like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in my next video. I'm going to finish my soup. Bye-bye now. Delicious.